All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out and enjoy and engage with our second Global in the Granite State T. William and Patricia Ayers Global in the Granite State series on developing emerging economies. Last month we heard from Ambassador Dick Sweat about his work in Africa, and we're very excited to be with Marc Blumenthal of Social Ventures Foundation here in the state, based in Dover. Before we get into the conversation, have a few things to mention. Of course, first and foremost, we are a community-supported nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we rely heavily on a wonderful community of members, donors, supporters, and sponsors. So thank you to everyone who is here in person, who is a member or a donor, and those who are not yet donors will be talking to you soon. For those who are watching online, if you're not yet a member or supporter of our organization, these programs do take a lot of energy, time, and resources. So we do hope that you'll support our great work via a donation or by joining the membership on wacnh.org. Also, as a nonpartisan organization, we do not take any stances on policy, on politics, or issues. We are here to be the platform for conversations, to bring in expert speakers who have great experiences, who are able to give us insights for you to then take that information and apply it to your life, apply it to your worldview, and apply it to your understanding of what's going on. We know that these conversations are important and that they do move the needle as we continue to reach out and try and solve a lot of these challenges. So if you've missed any of our previous programming, you can go onto our website and find recordings of it there. We also have the Global in the Granite State. Marc was one of our interviewees last year. So if you want to learn more beyond what we talk about here tonight, you can go and check that as well. Thank you again to Marc for joining us here today. I will give a very brief introduction to his background. You can read more about him online, but Marc is a social entrepreneur by nature, by background, and really has a passion for this work. I'll let him tell you a little bit more later about how he gets involved in this and how he started up this great work. But the Social Ventures Foundation is dedicated to working across the world and specifically in Central America and the Caribbean. And you'll have to correct me if that's expanded since the last time we chatted. But to build social franchises in emerging economies, in developing countries, in order to meet two goals. One is to create economic activity within those communities, and two is to solve an issue that community is experiencing. I love the first venture that he created in Haiti, and we'll get into that in a moment. But Marc, why don't you take a moment to talk about your background and how you got into the social innovation work that you're doing now?
Thank you so much, Tim, for that. My background is pretty straightforward. I grew up outside of Boston, went on to school at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. I'm an experiential learner, so I didn't attend classes very much. What I did is I got a job, and it was a startup. And that startup made me a lot of money my freshman and sophomore year, which enabled me to then buy a Volkswagen camper bus in Europe. And during my junior year, I decided to take off and travel as far east as I could, which brought me to India. During that trip, I saw a lot of poverty and it stuck with me. Just never has left my mind. And when I got back, I started a educational organization upon graduation, which engaged over 2 million students and faculty here in the United States in experiential education. I then went on to do a series of what I'll call deep technology startups which included working with MIT on the placement of a plasma fusion facility, which, by the way, was supposedly placed here at Pease Air Force Base. And then I also participated in another startup with the ex-team physician for the Boston Red Sox, New England Patriots, which was a medical device company. And finally, a third startup was with the gentleman who was the scientist for communications for the Voyager 2 satellite, which is the satellite farthest from the planet, and that was a satellite communications company startup. Now, throughout this time of these technology innovations, I just couldn't let go of this whole thing that was eating at me, which is, why is there so much freaking poverty on the planet? And so I decided to kick the tires of the poverty reduction industry. And let me define that. These are the big players of an industry which very much exists here in the United States and, of course, outside the United States. It's with the World Bank, the International Finance Corporation, the Development Finance Corporation, UNDP, and Development Finance Corporation, which is the U.S. development entity that focuses on, supposedly, on poverty reduction. Now, my walkaway from these meetings was that fundamentally these organizations were doing what we call a top-down paradigm. They enrich themselves fundamentally. They then enrich governments that they did business with in these nations, and also the haves of the nations who fundamentally took and put forth whatever projects that they were trying to do, especially the infrastructure ones, with trickle-down expectations to the have-nots that were not realized. So I decided to then look for anyone that was doing what I would call a business play at the base of the pyramid. And then I came across a guy who was doing that, and he, in fact, in my book, was the very first individual to do. Now, my walkaway from microcredit was a really, wonderful kind of business opportunity for the poor. But it left it up to the individual to come up with their own ideas for a business. So if you're born very poor in Somalia, Guatemala, Haiti, you're pretty much left up to your imagination to come up with an idea for a business. And again, if you're born very poor, what you tend to think of is a small little retail stand, because that's what you see every day when you wake up and walk around your neighborhood, or a goat, or a sewing machine. So when you get a microcredit loan, you tend to get a loan for another retail stand, another goat, or another sewing machine. It doesn't get you out of poverty, but it does give you a little bit of cash flow. So I started to look and think about what might be the flip side of microcredit. And at that time, I kind of coined the term micro-franchising, which was the idea of putting together a pre-bundled business that could create a job for an individual to deliver an affordable social impact for low-income communities. The real key here is that the primary employment of the poor is not employment. It's, in fact, self-employment. You got to get your own job. So I kind of looked at this, and I actually presented this model at, I was invited to MIT Media Lab to present this in Boston, and then they asked me to go to India and present it there, which I did as well. But my walkaway at that time was, even though I had several ideas for putting together micro-franchises that, again, could create employment opportunities to deliver affordable social impact, the numbers didn't crunch right, because the technology was not there to enable the operation of these types of ventures. And this goes back 20 to 25 years ago. Now, fast forward to today, we have lots of technology innovation that really can cut costs and improve outcomes for the base of the pyramid. And therefore, I started in 2017 the Social Ventures Foundation. And our focus is really to engage this next generation of university students in the development of social venture solutions that are franchisable to poverty reduction challenges. And that is fundamentally what the foundation is up to. We have had several stages in our journey. The first one being that we started to do basically a showcase for social entrepreneurs around the world. We did that for a couple of years. And then we said, okay, we've got to really demonstrate what we mean by a social venture. So I decided to work on a social venture, and we picked the poorest nation in the Americas to deliver that social venture, and that was Haiti. And then, similar to the program that we run for universities, we decided to look at a poverty reduction challenge, because that's what we ask students to look at. And I could have picked sanitation or housing, but we chose food insecurity. And food insecurity begets vitamin deficiency, which means that you are basically have poor immune system if you're vitamin deficient, especially if you're only eating a meal or a meal and a half a day. So the challenge was, and by the way, for kids, it means that they can't really focus in school if they're vitamin deficient. So the challenge is, how do you create a social venture that can create jobs for low-income populations, to deliver, especially youth and women, to deliver an affordable social impact. In this case, it means vitamins, right, to low-income populations. Now, you and I both know that you cannot sell a handful of vitamins to anyone, but you can sell a shaved ice cone with a vitamized topping. And in Haiti, this is called Fresco. Unfortunately, Fresco in Haiti is made with dirty water ice, and the toppings are not very good at all. But our ice was clean water ice, and our topping was vitamized, and we had it in different flavors. And we did a commercial proof of concept that really showed that, number one, that we could create markets for this product, which we did with housing, very poor housing projects where we identified very poor women who were literally in these, I'll call them houses, they weren't much at all, where they had to stay at home because they had kids in the back room. So we set them up with a little retail stand, we trained them, we gave them a t-shirt. They were a micro-franchisee because they had a certain territory that nobody else could have. And we delivered the product right to their doorstep every day, and they could sell it right in front of their house, make enough money to live on, which they didn't before, and also deliver an affordable social impact for their community. We also did this for schools, again, where we hired very poor women to be inside the school or outside to sell directly to the kids. And interestingly enough, the poorest schools in Haiti are the public schools. And we sold out in those schools. And then we also built a vehicle called the Vike, which is a three-wheel vehicle, kind of looks like something out of Peter Fonda in the movie, if you ever saw that, where it's a three-wheel vehicle that we built in Haiti to deliver the Vice toppings and ice blocks. And we built that in Haiti, as I mentioned, which is also pretty interesting. At the end of the day, I think we were able to do our commercial proof of concept, and when I went and had meetings with the International Finance Corporation, which is, again, this division of World Bank, and I should remind everyone, if they haven't remembered this, that World Bank was started here in the state of New Hampshire. Its mission is a world without poverty, but in fact, it does not invest at the base of the pyramid, does not. It may get engaged in some of the microcredit activity, but does not do equity investments. And I watched as the IFC sent people to our office in Port-au-Prince. We had several meetings with them. And we showed them the Excels. And the Excels clearly demonstrated that we could be profitable within 7 years. Because when you're dealing in 25-cent ice cones, it's going to take a while before you can break even. So you have to have patient capital. Now, this gets into another side of the coin, which gets into impact investing, which I'll be glad to address in a little bit. But it was interesting to note that the International Finance Corporation decided not to invest with us. They decided to invest in Culligan Water. And Culligan Water is owned by one of the wealthiest families in Haiti. The poor cannot afford this water. And these plastic bottles absolutely litter the streets everywhere. So unfortunately, we learned a hard lesson, which is it's tough to raise money for investment at the base of the pyramid. But I do think that today we can look at this whole concept of social franchising as a really good business model that can create jobs to deliver affordable social impact for this population, which again I'll define as making under $4 a day. And I just want to ask one question, if I may, because this gets fundamentally into the major issue that I want to bring up. I know everybody, including myself, are very concerned about climate change. but right up there is poverty. And I'd like to ask everyone just a question. How many people would you say on the planet make under $4 a day?
99%.
Well, yeah.
That's at least 5 billion.
Okay, at least 5 billion. Well, there are 8 billion people on the planet. And of that, 25%, or 1 in 4 people, which is 2 billion people, make under $4 a day. So if you go around the room and go 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to be under 4, and same goes for you as you go around. Now, that's an unacceptable number by any stretch of the imagination. These people are being excluded from the free enterprise system. There's no excuse for this because, in my opinion, poverty is man-made, and we can unmake it if we work at this together and put together a really sound approach and strategy that can really create jobs to deliver affordable social impact. What we're talking about here is taking people who make under $4 a day and giving them jobs to deliver affordable social impact for people who make $4 a day. So again, we're looking at the have-nots working for the have-nots, not working for the haves. And this gets into a bottom-up strategy, which is fundamental to exactly what we're trying to do.
Great. So one of the things that I find fascinating in this conversation is you are working at the bottom of the pyramid, but of course you are working in environments that require connections to the top of the pyramid. So how do you manage working in these sometimes less than savory places in terms of corruption and regulations and movement of capital? How do you get into these countries, into these locations, and navigate those systems?
With a certain amount of difficulty, for sure. One of my biggest problems with Haiti is as follows. It takes me, in my my startup days, it took me like 15 minutes and $50 to actually form an LLC here in the United States. It takes well over a year and over $20,000 to start an LLC in Haiti. So that gets into the fundamentally what goes on, because you have so many hands reaching out, especially lawyers, that want a piece of the action even before you start day one with a venture, a business that can create value not only for the workers but for the people that will benefit by the products or services that enterprise would create. So that's the first one. The second is basically stay under the radar, which is what we also do. Now, unfortunately, because of the problems in Port-au-Prince, we had to close down our operation. It was totally unsafe. Our manager lost a brother there. We had to move him out. It's just gone literally to hell in a handbasket. We now are taking up, we have a location now in Maribales, which is north. I'll get into what we're doing there, but we are now running another program, which is the EPIC program, the End Poverty Innovation Challenge. And I'm pleased to announce that we had 3 universities that were engaged during this past year. It's called epichaiti.org, by the way, if you're interested in looking at that one, epichaiti.org. But Epic Haiti 2024 is our first competition in Haiti. It engages students from 3 universities. These students are given the ability to develop a social venture solution to a specific poverty reduction challenge that they personally identify with. So it's creating local solutions to local problems. And we just had a semifinal competition. I'll be flying down, and on the 30th, we'll be doing a final competition with 6 finalist teams. And I do want to say here that it's amazing to me how creative youth can be. And I'm just fascinated by the results here of the student teams that came out with solutions to poverty reduction challenges for this next competition that's coming up. We also are doing another project in Haiti, which is where our partner there is Partners in Health Hospital. If you're familiar with Partners in Health, that was started by a gentleman named Paul Farmer out of Harvard Medical School. He built his very first hospital for the poor in Maribales. And I did clearly wanted to demonstrate several other social ventures that are franchisable that can deliver affordable social impact to low-income populations. Now, over 2 billion of the world's population do not have adequate access to health care. And then you know that if you're sick, you can't work. So this compounds the lives of the poor, no matter where they live. And what we have put together, and I started out working with Northeastern University Bioengineering Department with a vision of putting together a complete set of diagnostics that we could deliver to the poor and employ a person who does not have much money to deliver it. And we are now working on this project. I'll take my smartphone here, but essentially what we'll be doing is putting together, this project is called MedCheck Me. We'll be using a smartphone, and we'll be able to hire somebody to deliver a complete set of diagnostics, which includes an eye test, a hearing test, a skin test, cardiovascular, and a few others. For guess how much? $1. $1. No, we're not going to give things away. No, not on my watch. We are going to charge, but it's going to be an affordable charge that the poor can afford, that can be sustainable over the long term, because that's what has to happen. We've got to create an economy there. And you know, fundamentally, if you really want to save the children, you've got to get their parents jobs. That's key.
So I want to go 10,000 foot view first, and then we can come back to some of the great work you're accomplishing. You mentioned the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. Yes, celebrating 85 years, 80 years, 80 years. Bretton Woods Accords, international economy being set up there. I know you have some issues, and you've highlighted a few of them with how those organizations work. But what are the ways in which those organizations might be reformed to do a better job in addressing the issues that they intend to address, of poverty reduction, of building economies within countries who need that kind of help? What are the approaches that they, in your vision, should be taking?
Well, the first thing I would do, I'm not sure if anybody has been to the World Bank. I have several times. And I can say that I've eaten in their cafeteria. And their cafeteria has a sushi, pizza section. They have just an incredible food assortment. And the first thing I would do at the World Bank is say, we're going to eat a meal once a week that the poor eat, so that the people that work for the World Bank will eat from the same cooking as the people they're supposed to serve, and get a real handle on what that's like. Because I think there's a real disconnect here between the people that we entrust to deal in poverty reduction and how they in fact are dealing with it. When I was in Haiti, there were just too many five-star hotels being taken up by residents of these international NGOs and banks, among others. Once we get down to the nitty-gritty, though, in terms of what they should do, I do think that these institutions need to really look at a bottom-up approach to the problems that these populations have, because top-down does not work. Unfortunately, they do not want to put resources into what they would say are very heavily overhead types of endeavors that you have to go around and look at, these types of businesses that could create employment for the poor. They tend to want to delegate any of this types of activity to other entities. And I think the World Bank is just too big for its bridges, in a sense. I think that, again, if I were in the World Bank's position, I would say, look, what is it we could do today, not tomorrow, but today, to really change this paradigm? USAID has the same problem, by the way. They deal with approximately 5 NGOs, give or take a few, where they have approximately 70–80% of their money goes to those NGOs. So these institutions tend to deal with the same players. And the same players have been around for a long time. It doesn't work the same way in the private sector when it comes to startups. It's interesting to note, because I've been in the private sector and the equity markets, that if you have a really good idea, that there's always potentially somebody who's willing to invest in it. But unfortunately, in the sector we call the poverty reduction industry, it's very hard to get innovation going because, again, they're very set in their ways. They're set in their structures. And many of these organizations are very governmentally focused. Now, that's not to say that these institutions don't have incredibly gifted people who are trying very hard to change the paradigm. But they are they are in these institutions where change is very, very difficult. We just tried to get a little bit of money to help sponsor our competition in Haiti out of one of the bigger NGOs, and they said it's going to take between 3 and 4 months to get approval for a $7,500 grant. That would help us with supplies and materials, and also a little bit of the investment that we're going to make in the winner of the competition. So, again, not to belabor this, but change has got to happen, but it's got to be in the World Bank's situation. They've got to fundamentally say, how can we really address this situation, bottom up, not top down?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. For many people, their first experience or the first time they've heard about social ventures is Tom's, giving away a pair of shoes for every shoe sold. There's many various companies out there who have followed in their footsteps to sell one thing and give away something to the countries or the people who need it most. And very interestingly, you said that you are not giving anything away. What is the challenge that you see with the model of Tom's or Bombas or whoever else you want to point to here, of giving things away to the poor rather than building something that they can utilize and grow themselves?
Well, I think that you just said it. I think
we may have talked about this before.
No, but you just said it. I mean, fundamentally, we want to teach people how to fish. We don't want to give them fish. It just undercuts what needs to happen here. We have to change this paradigm. We've got to enable people to be able to start ventures that potentially can be franchised, because the franchise model is a very successful model here in the United States. The social franchise model is a very new model. Which, by the way, is also being addressed by the Rosenberg School at University of New Hampshire. I met Bill Rosenberg. He's the founder of Dunkin' Donuts. He asked me a long time ago when he had given a $1 million chair to help get it going at UNH, which I helped do. But at the end of the day, the process of moving this along is pretty slow. And I think that we are very much focused on speeding up this process and creating a situation where people really do understand what social franchising is about. Fundamentally, it's franchising, but it's focused on folks in our mission, focused on folks who are making under $4 a day. We want to create a variety of social franchises, whether it be V-Ice or MedCheck Me, and there are plenty more, just tons more, that can address all of these challenges that people have. Because when you look at a challenge, it's a market opportunity. And we do have the technology now that can enable us to develop these types of products and services that can be affordable by low-income populations. But on the other flip side here, it has to be a case where investment capital that's going to go into these deals has to be patient capital. So to that end, the foundation is in fact forming a fund. It's a private equity fund called the End Poverty Fund. And the focus of that fund is to invest in seed stage, small, medium, and large social franchises that can create jobs to deliver affordable social impact. Because the elephant in the room is that nobody wants to invest in the base of the pyramid because they're risk averse. So to mitigate that risk, we've got to communicate this whole new business model called social franchising. Because just like franchising, you have a model that can be scaled very quickly. You start with a commercial proof of concept, you then start scaling it 1 or 2 stores or micro franchisees, and you continue to build it based upon the success that you have. Not only that, but the success of the franchisor is the success of the franchisee. That's a symbiotic relationship. And that can really help scale things at the base of the pyramid. And finally, social franchising, again, from the foundation's point of view, can be something that could be really huge for the poor, and that is sharing equity. Nobody gives the poor equity. Nobody. And it's essential that not only do we help raise their wages, but we also want to give them a piece of the rock, because that's what's going to get them out of poverty.
And one other part of this is in many of these social venture ideas, the shoes are not being made locally, and they are, or the food is not being produced locally, or the poverty reduction ideas are not being produced locally. How can we bring and through ventures like what you're doing, the production, the growth, build economies to solve these challenges long term, rather than throwing money, shoes, food, water, whatever the need is at the problem?
The answer to that is pretty straightforward. You've got to engage the youth of these nations in coming up with the local solutions to their local problems, which is what we're doing. This is not a north-south kind of thing. We're talking about a program that is very much focused on getting students from these universities who are deciding that social entrepreneurship is more important than entrepreneurship, and I'll get to that in a second, that working on a project, a venture, that can really deliver benefits to populations that are living in extreme poverty is absolutely crucial to the success of not only that nation's democracy, but also the free enterprise system. I want to remind everyone here that poverty, extreme poverty, is the greatest threat to democracies in the free enterprise system, bar none. The reason we have these migrants at our southern borders and the southern borders in Europe is because they don't have jobs. Yes, they're fleeing problems, but those problems are caused because the economies are failing in these nations. And therefore, to turn this around, we need to create jobs. And those jobs have got to be created to deliver affordable social impact for the bulk of these populations, which in many cases are well over 60 and 70% of the population that are making under $4 a day.
So to your epic challenge that you've outlined a little bit about, I think your first one was run in Honduras?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica, that's right. Can you tell us a little bit about what that challenge looked like, what the competition looked like, and what came out of that? What franchise idea did you eventually select?
Well, there were a number of Costa Rican, we started out, again, there were 3 universities. We had several teams competing. Really great ideas came out of that. There was one that was focused on providing jobs for the handicapped. Another was focused on creating tourist destinations out of very poor indigenous communities. And there was another one that was actually focused on hemp farming, because hemp is a very easy crop to grow, and it can provide not only seeds but also feed for cattle. The winner of that competition was, in fact, the ecotourism, and we're working with them now to actually put together a plan that can help that we're going to roll out eventually in Costa Rica. Our next competition is being done in Haiti, and this is our second one that we're working on. But in effect, what we're now going to be focused on is what we will call a capacity building program for the End Poverty Fund. Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned, the real issue here is the lack of funding or investment at the base of the pyramid. And where I mentioned there are social franchises out there, the Rosenberg School has basically identified maybe done 10 case studies of social franchises. That's not many. And so therefore we need to build capacity here in 2 areas. One is we need to build a pipeline to actually facilitate the development of social ventures that can be franchised. And that's where, that again is a major focus of the foundation. And secondly, we want to build capacity with the human resources that can help manage these social franchises and help scale them, which is the second component here, which is really key. So to that end, the foundation is now have developed what we call the Social Venture Institute. We will be piloting this institute at INCAI, which is the best business school in Central and South America. It's also located in Costa Rica. And the focus of the institute is basically 3 labs. We have the EPIC Innovation Lab, which, similar to EPIC, engages students in the creation of social venture solutions to poverty reduction challenges. We then have the Social Franchise Lab, which again is focused on getting students to identify social ventures within their nation or their region that have been operational for 2 years, that have the potential to become social franchises. And those kids will actually look at developing a social franchise plan for that social venture. And the third lab is called the Impact Investment Lab, where kids will be identifying any social franchises within their nation or within their region and helping to do a sophisticated investment analysis of that venture. In each case, the outcomes of these 3 labs will be to provide potential deals for the End Poverty Fund or any other investment fund that wants to really make investments at the base of the pyramid.
Okay, I'm going to have one more question for you, but before we turn it over to the audience, both in person and online, so continue to send us your questions online. Looks like Larry's got some for me already, so I'll take a look at those in a minute. But if you are in person, we have a mic that you will notice you will not hear it in the room, but it's for online, so please do wait for that mic. But in terms of the various challenges that you've run, the social franchises that you've worked with, do you have any words of wisdom for people who want to get into this kind of work, who want to build out different franchises or approaches in their own communities so that they can be empowered to do this work, maybe in conjunction with you or outside of your reach?
Well, I got to tell you, it's a struggle. This is not easy stuff. I think at this point I should make a distinction here between entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship, because I've been in both worlds. As an entrepreneur, my major objective was making money and providing a return on investment to my investor. As a social entrepreneur, my major objective is delivering a social impact and making sure it's sustainable. So if you are looking to become a social entrepreneur, you need to understand that this is not going to buy you, a lot of good material things. You're going to make a living, but you're going to be driven by your heart and really driven by the fact that you want to make this world a better place. And I can't say enough about the need to do that at this point in time, given all the challenges that we face here on the planet Earth. In addition, the other issue you're going to face is funding, because investment capital for any of these types of endeavors is just almost non-existent. You'll find, for example, a foundation may give you a grant 1 year because you're the flavor of the month or the flavor of the year. Next year, that money may not be available. So the sustainability of capital is a real problem for any of these social ventures. This, again, is where we felt that it's absolutely essential that we start a fund to help to focus on investment in these types of endeavors. Unfortunately, there are very few of these, less than 5 that I know about. It's a problem. I was at a conference in Malaga, Spain back in November, made up of social impact investors from around the world. It was interesting to me to note that of the maybe 2,000 people were there, maybe less than 5 had any types of investments being made at the base of the pyramid. They all talked about it. They all had pictures of the poor on their brochures. But at the end of the day, zero. And that's the unfortunate reality here. So it will take 2 things to happen here. One is vehicles that can help to bring in investments, and then 2, investors to help make that a reality. And if you're going to invest in an impact fund, no matter what it is, you have to be aware of the fact that this is going to be patient capital, and returns are going to be not great. You might get 3, 4, 5%, maybe. but I'm not saying that's the case in any of these types of impact investment funds. But I got to say that a long time ago when I was volunteering for UNIS, I was one of the first people to make an investment in the Grameen bond, which I think at that time was looking at maybe a 1 or 2% return. And I said to myself, at that time, it was far more important for me to make an investment in a vehicle that could be sustainable than to just write out a check and get a tax-deductible contribution for something that I was going to be asked for year after year after year. So this gets back to that save the children metaphor that I used before. You really do have to create jobs if you want to save the children.
Great. All right. Well, I'll turn it to the audience here. Certainly, we'll focus on any questions in the room first. But yeah, Sue.
Hi. My name is Sue Tatton, and I've worked in international development for 44 years. I started in the Peace Corps and have worked for USAID, UNDP, many of the organizations you have cited. And I just spent 4 years in Liberia working on what was called the Liberia Economic Policy Dialogue activity, which was funded by USAID. And I think the idea, the concept is interesting. One of my questions is if you're differentiating social entrepreneurship from entrepreneurship, and there's no income, there's no profit coming in any way, then how is that sustainable? Number one. And then the other piece is, World Bank really is not going to be able to provide, it's not a grassroots organization. It's really focused on macro fiscal economics and large investing in countries and setting policies, economic policies for countries. So I'm not sure I would look to World Bank to promote this kind of a venture. But there are opportunities. In fact, I've worked with even USAID has done this kind of work. So I think it would be interesting. I live in Barrington, so maybe we can get together and talk. But certainly there are opportunities. There are also, one of the questions I had was, what's the difference between social entrepreneurship and forming an NGO? So currently I work for an organization called Cadmus Group, and Cadmus is a company that is out of Washington, D.C., but works all over the world. So there may be some interest you may have some interest in exploring that as well. There are opportunities that exist.
Thank you so much for that question. I'm just going to start out with the first part of your question. When I talked about a social venture, I did make I think I stated it, that this has got to be a sustainable venture. Everything that we're focused on has got to have income and revenues. So, for example, MedCheck.me, when I talked about $1 for a MedCheck, that is bringing in revenues. The thing is, when you do price out a product that is affordable and it creates a job to deliver it, you've got to be able to look at Excel spreadsheets that go out 7 to 10 years before you can actually turn the whole venture into a profitable mode. So we've got to move away from the Wall Street kind of credo of 3 years, I want a lot of money, because that's how everybody thinks. And I know, again, that we all need to make livings. I'm not in any way, shape, or form taking away from that. But, we've got to, again, move from the me to the we here, folks, because if we don't do something about this problem of poverty, it is going to take us down, along with global warming. And by the way, global warming or climate change has absolutely incredible impacts on the poor, much more so than the haves. Again, I just think there are solutions here that we can find to help mitigate that. As far as the World Bank is concerned, its an investment arm is the International Finance Corporation, the IFC. The IFC, again, I'm just going from an eat from your own cooking kind of approach. And again, there are a lot of dedicated people in these organizations. I'm not trying to put them down in terms of their dedication, their mission, and so forth. But fundamentally, the structure that's been created here is a structure just like Wall Street. IFC is the breadwinner for the World Bank. That's how they get a lot of their money. They put out loans. But IFC gets their money by investing in the haves, not the have-nots. Therefore, there's a huge disconnect between the mission of the World Bank, which when you walk in the hall there, the very first greeting hall, a world without poverty. And I saw that and I said, really? And you've eaten the World Bank cafeteria? So, oh, okay, sorry.
I'm a Peace Corps guy.
Oh, okay,
No, I grew up, I actually did eat the food.
okay, good. Well,
I lived in the village.
that's imperative. You know, and I actually had a conversation with the head of the Peace Corps not too long ago, and I tried to talk to that person, she at that time, about the need to look at various types of Peace Corps projects that could be scalable. Because you have entrepreneurs everywhere, social entrepreneurs or Peace Corps people, right? You're out there doing something. And I'm sure somebody discovered gold, alchemy, right? But I couldn't get her on board. By the way, 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, I met with Marc Brown, who was running the UNDP, and I had the same conversation with him. He couldn't get it. He could not get social enterprise. He just kept saying, I need to give away things. That was 25 years ago. Today's slightly different. I met him fairly recently. Terry.
Yeah, Peter.
First of all, very nice and well thought out presentation. I really appreciate it. I had a question. How does Social Ventures ensure that funds that you guys do receive are being used appropriately and effectively? And what controls do you guys have?
Well, I can tell you this: we don't get much funds. I mean, being a small NGO is a rough road, and we certainly have a certain amount of debt that we have. And if you look at, you know, what kind of salaries we get, not much. I'll be glad to disclose that if anybody wants to know how much I get paid. But at the end of the day, we do adhere to straightforward accounting principles, and we do get, you know, a report that we put out. At the end of the day, I got to tell you, it's just a totally different world than, you know, a medical device company. It's like night and day. I can't say, you know, the difference here. But I do believe in definitely being accountable for what you're doing. You know, one of my major gripes with Haiti was the fact that during the awful earthquake that Haiti experienced, the American Red Cross raised $250 million, and I could be a little bit off on that one, but very close, to build houses. And do you know how many houses they built? It was under 10, I think close to 5. And they were never held accountable for that. There is just so much unfortunate accounting that goes bad, you know, that nobody's held accountable for when it comes to these efforts. Yep.
You mentioned a report. Can I ask what the name of the report is and what the frequency of that report is? Is it yearly?
Oh, what are you talking about in terms of report?
You mentioned that you guys believe in straightforward accounting principles, and that you guys additionally have a report that you guys put out. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I mean, people are well welcome to have our financial statement. That's about it. And then in terms of what we do, we have several websites that kind of outline what we do. First one is socialventuresfoundation.org. The second is Epic Haiti. And then we also have vicehaiti.com. So those are all websites that you'll see exactly our activities. I think at the end of the day, what we've done for very little money has been outstanding. And where we're heading now, I think, has a lot of possibilities. Yeah.
Actually, hold on. I just want to address one thing of Sue's question about the difference between a nonprofit NGO and a social venture. So social ventures are businesses that are looking to actually do two things. So traditionally in the U.S., a business is required to only focus on one thing, which is making a profit. Now with social ventures, B corporations, things of that nature, they are able to pursue two goals. So a profit and a social good. So for the vitamin the ice, it was to make a profit and to provide nutrients to a malnourished community. So that's kind of where the difference is. It's a little bit of a hybrid and a different way to approach. All right, Jack.
Thanks, Tim. My question is more cultural than economic. Is it fair to describe what you're doing as a kind of an assisted bootstrapping for individuals?
You know, I'd like to think of it as a garden where we have, we're giving, you know, we're growing seeds here. We're helping people grow seeds of ideas that come out of their own heads
Yeah.
that deal with effective solutions to poverty reduction challenges that their communities have.
But then you're recruiting people to sell the ice cream and to make the $4 a day. Is that
No, they do, the social entrepreneurs, not us.
the
So-
social entrepreneur?
Yeah, so
How receptive are they to doing this, to this kind of individual uplifting within societies that are so, like Haiti, that are so corrupt, dangerous?
well, you know, yeah.
Are people really interested in? Do you find a lot of enthusiasm? Is what I'm trying to get at.
So we had a young man that literally slept outside our office in Port-au-Prince for 4 weeks looking for a job for us, and eventually got one. But you have no clue how many people are desperate for any type of work in Haiti and a lot of these other countries, desperate for work. So there's no there's no difference between these folks and us. We all want to make a living. We all want to provide for our families. It's just that when you're put into this kind of paradigm where you know 90% or maybe 95% of the people are making less than $4 a day, and 5 to 10% are making a lot more, it creates a problem. It really does. And if you look at the impacts of this type of situation on democracies, you don't have to go far. You can see Venezuela, you can see Cuba, and there are several more that are teetering right now on the brink of authoritarianism because of extreme poverty. It's just the fact of life. You know, I was in Venezuela before Chavez came into power, and when I took the road into Caracas, I looked at the side of the road, and there was this kind of sloping valley coming down, and on the hillsides were these really absolutely horrific shacks that were inhabited by the poor. And I said to the driver, you know, what happens when it rains? And he says, well, many of the shacks just, you know, float down the hill and killing the occupants. And when I got to Caracas, and I was talking to a group of business people there, I asked them, I said, what are you guys doing about poverty in your country? And they looked at me and they said, oh, that's the role of government. Government takes care of that. And I looked at them and I said, well, I don't think they're doing a good job. And they said, no, they're taking care of it. And I said, well, look, guys, I said, you know, with all due respect, if you don't do something, and I'm talking about you, the business community, don't do something about poverty in your nation, you're going to be out of business. And you know, as much as I hate to say it, that was prophecy that has happened, no question.
So I have a good follow-on to that from one of our online questions, and it's about how are you received in these communities as a white male from New Hampshire, which is a place that many of our international visitors who don't even know exists before they arrive here. But how do you build trust within communities? How do you build these relationships to make these entrepreneurship opportunities?
Well, it's interesting when I'm in these communities, and you know, I guess you know people ask me first of all, do I carry a gun, for example? You know, and I say, hell no, I carry a sense of humor. And when I go to these communities, I never think of myself as white. I just, it doesn't occur to me. I'm talking to people as they're human beings. I don't care what skin color they are. I remember, however, a funny story, when we were looking at an office in Port-au-Prince for VICE, I was walking up and down a street. It was fairly residential. And I saw a lot of the neighbors come out, and they started looking at me. And I turned to our manager, Emmanuel, who is very, very dark-skinned. And I said to him, I know what these people are saying. And he said, what? I said, they're saying, there goes the neighborhood, a white guy's going to move in. Flip it around.
So another question we have from our online audience is about working within communities and building out just opportunities. Just trying to summarize. Sorry.
Yep.
So how do we build opportunities? How do we create these ventures, and how do you inspire people to get involved?
There's no problem in inspiring. You know, they're just, I got to say, young people they're just a lot of, it's gratifying to see these younger people really wanting to try to change the planet in an appropriate way. So there's never a lack of resources. But I think the real issue here, again, getting back to how you start anything, is capital. The lack of capital at the base of the pyramid is what's prolonging the problem. And mitigating that risk is absolutely key to changing the paradigm. And that's where social franchising comes in. I firmly believe that this model can really help. But it's also going to take the ingenuity and innovation of younger people to come up with products and services that can create jobs to deliver an affordable social impact. It's interesting to note, MedCheck Me, I was meeting with my internist, Mass General, right? And I shared the model with him, and he said, holy crully, this is better than what we've got. We're going to be able to allow somebody in a rural area to get a complete set of diagnostics. We'll point and shoot them if there's a problem to go to the local clinic, not local, they'll have to take whatever, or a hospital. And when they get there, they'll be able to, it's a palm recognition, they'll be able to download their medical file right there in the hospital. And then when that doc does whatever that doc does, when that person goes back to the rural area or suburban, wherever they came from, they'll be able to check with the MedCheck Me person and come back with any follow-up that doc has asked for. And the problem there, of course, is that for people to go from rural areas to hospitals, very expensive. And many of them just don't because they can't afford it. Or if they do, it has to be because they're dying. So the need to bring healthcare out to these communities is absolutely key. And this is the kind of thing that can happen. So again, getting down to it, I do think that there's just a tremendous amount of opportunity here now, today, that there wasn't 20 or 25 years ago, because we can bring prices for these products and services down to an affordable level so the poor can participate in this. I'll give you another example. I'm working with a young man from Guatemala. He was a graduate of Earth University. And his whole thesis was on a particular type of mushroom, which produces a tremendous amount of protein. Now, this mushroom can be grown by a poor person in a very small footprint next to their house. And that individual, by growing these mushrooms, can make quite a bit of money just in terms of growing these and then selling them through a social franchise approach to the community or for export. There's a number of possibilities here. But again, the seed of that idea came from somebody from this generation. And I do think that there's just a tremendous amount of possibilities here when we leverage youth, and especially university students, to come up with solutions to local poverty reduction challenges, because the absolute scaling of these things, once they're vetted, will be done by the same generation. And we need to not only create these ideas, but we also have to train these individuals as human resources to actually help scale them utilizing social franchising.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and this one touches on the environment. So our questioner asks, we know many of these countries are afflicted by climate change, and that many of them are in poverty because of environmental disasters. So what are you doing to build in resiliency, sustainability, and approaches to combating climate change?
Well, I'm not doing anything. The students are going to be the ones doing it, okay? But just to answer the question, I mean, it's not me, it's them. and even MedCheck Me, I've got a young student from Northeastern University who was part of the original project for MedCheck Me, who has graduated, is now the the CTO of the company that we're forming, which is MedCheck Me. So at the end of the day, we need lots of gray matter to focus on these challenges. And when it comes to the impacts of climate change, there's just a tremendous amount of possibility here for coming up with solutions to these challenges. So for example, one of the teams in Haiti that is going to be competing in the final competition on October 30th is really looking at a very serious problem, which is plastics. Plastics litter the street everywhere in Haiti. The trash is just mounting up. And they are putting together, and I'm not pitching them because that's going to be decided by judges, but I'm just sharing with you their model. They're going to be, they've done a very simple proof of concept here of taking plastics, mixing it with soil, and putting together bricks, which is huge, absolutely huge, because then we can build housing. That's the next step. Certainly better housing than they have now. It's earthquake-resistant housing, because you have plastic mixed with soil, that is going to vibrate a lot. So again, that's one of the things that we can look at, and there are several more. You know, one of the ones, another thing that we came up with was the fact that you look at malaria nets. Malaria nets have been around for God knows how many years. Nothing has changed in malaria nets in terms of how they've been designed. Has anybody slept under a malaria net? What was your how comfortable were you? Right, because there's no ventilation. Right. Well, apart from that, we had another team of students come up with another design for a malaria net that actually had a breeze going through it. The problem is that people do not sleep under malaria nets. They give them out. And along the coast, guess what they do with them? They use them for fishing. But they don't sleep under them because they're so darn uncomfortable, right? So to get a breeze going through them is huge. They're just simple kinds of things that could be done if people have the will, the interest, and the focus to do them. And again, creating sustainable social ventures that can be franchised to deliver these and create jobs to deliver them, to me, is what has to happen, no question.
Well, thank you very much, Marc, for your insights. I always like to leave an opportunity for a final word, thought, or something inspiring to send us off with so that we are not all pessimistic about the state of the world.
Well, I'm very optimistic, actually, when it comes to this next generation. And, you know, again, the thing I'm just going to say is what I said toward the beginning, and that gets down to the fundamental that if you want to save the children, you got to get their parents' jobs. That is, to me, absolutely what has to happen. We can talk about all the other stuff, but it all comes down to job creation. And that's what's key, absolutely key. And job creation has to happen equally in terms of both male and female. And it has to be a job creation that creates affordable social impact to these populations.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking Marc for his time and his insights. I appreciate the great work you're doing around the world from right here in New Hampshire and showing the great connections that can be made from here in the States. Thank you to everyone who joined us here tonight in person, those watching online, and the recording. Next week, we have three really great events. We are doing Congressional District 2 candidate forums, so really challenging both of those candidates to talk about foreign policy in a real way that you don't see in debates where people are just shouting at each other. And then we will be out at the Portsmouth Athenaeum on Friday to talk about the decision by Ukraine in the 90s to give up the nuclear warheads that were on their territory, and why so many Ukrainians may be asking themselves whether or not that was a good idea these days. So it'll be really interesting couple of conversations. I do hope that you will be able to join us for some of those. If you want to come to the Congressional District 2 events in person, we need your registration by Monday morning at 9 a.m. UNH policy. So please do get those those registrations in. And if you are unsure if you're registered, please let us know and we can check for you. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next events.